So I am Caleb Hutchins. I'm in the e-learning department at Community Colleges of Spokane, and we are doing a series of these online course tours. And these are designed to give students or potential students or parents of potential students or anybody else that's curious about this, give them kind of a taste of what an online course looks like, how they are organized and run, and give you a chance to ask any questions about how taking an online class works. And we hope that by the end of this, you'll kind of have an idea of what you would expect if you took an online course. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Professor Tim Greenup first. He is, Tim, you teach writing, right?
Correct, yeah. I teach a lot of different types of English classes.
Excellent. So, yeah, you should be able to share your screen now. Let's make sure that that's working correctly. And then the other thing that I'll say as we get going here, all of the attendees, you should have along the bottom of your Zoom screen a button that says Q&A. And if you click on that, it gives you the ability to ask a question. You can, by typing out your question, you can do it anonymously. Nobody can see that question except for me. And then I will kind of share those questions out as we go along and hopefully look at answers for you, okay? So Tim, please take it away.
Okay. Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Tim Greenup. I'm a professor in the English department, and I'm going to just kind of walk you through my online English 101 class. And English 101 is like College Composition 1. It's a course that a lot of students take their first quarter or two at the college. And it's basically just like a introduction to academic writing type class. So yeah, I'm sharing my screen right now, and this is the homepage for my English 101 class. My design philosophy for online classes is to just try to keep them as simple and as kind of minimal as possible. So it's not a particularly flashy online class. There's not a lot of bells and whistles, but my thought is that in keeping the design just kind of simple and basic, that it's like easy for students to navigate and easy for them to move around. So my section is, the way that I do it is, the page is broken up into these different modules. And a module is just like a fancy word for these kind of rectangular boxes that we get here. And so the way that I do it, I have this kind of introductory module where I tell students a little bit about myself. There's like the course syllabus and just some kind of like basic course information in this top module that students are supposed to read like the first day or two of the class. And then after that, I just have weekly modules. So this course it's actually a live course that I'm teaching right now this summer. So you see the week 1 module here, week 2 module here, week 3 module there, and so on. And the way that I do it for my classes is I publish the modules probably 2 or 3 at a time, and probably publish them like every 2 weeks or so. So that way students like can kind of work ahead in the class if they want to or if they're needing to, but they can't work super far ahead because you know, the class is scaffolded, and everything that you do one week is sort of building on what you're doing the next week. And so so there's a bit of flexibility there in terms of like when students are completing the work, and so people can work ahead if they'd like to. Another thing that I'll say about my online classes, and this is true for all of my online classes, is that I try to keep keep a pretty like routine structure for the class. So like, and I say this here, so for like the sake of consistency with this class, discussion board posts will always be due on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then essays will always be due on Fridays. So, and that's consistent every week so that students can know what to expect, and kind of, you know, make the class fit into their life in whatever way works for them. And so like I said, I try to do some variation of this with all of my online classes where there's just really kind of consistent expectations every week. And so students know, oh crap, it's Tuesday evening. I haven't done my discussion board posts yet. I better do that before midnight. And so I like to keep it, yeah, pretty regular in that regard. I'm trying to think of other things that I wanted to highlight here. Oh, I had something, but then I lost it. The way, and I guess another way that I kind of think about the class is that I mean, I do think of all of the assignments as like building off of each other. And so what students are doing in their first discussion board assignment kind of feeds into what they're doing in their second discussion board assignment, and then feeds into their third. So there's kind of like, one of my students this quarter described it as like, it follows a sort of step-by-step pattern or process for the class. And again, I think that helps keep students kind of oriented, and keep them going with the class. And then it's an English class, so the kind of big culminating assignments are the essay assignments, and I'll show you one of those here. I won't get into the specifics of the assignment, but one thing that I wanted to show you is like, so at the top here is the description of what the students are doing in the assignment. For this one, it's like a visual analysis assignment of a comic strip. And then at the bottom of the page is my essay rubric. And a rubric is just kind of like the grading criteria that I'll use when I go to grade the essays. And I have rubrics attached to every assignment on my Canvas page. So students can know, like, it's really spelled out quite clearly, like what the expectations are for each assignment. And my hope anyway is that students use this rubric as kind of a checklist as they're working on their assignment and before they turn it in to me. Another thing that I do, and I think a lot of English instructors do this too, is I give like student examples. So here's my essay number 1 assignment we were just looking at. If I click here, it'll pull up a student example. So this is an example response to this assignment that a student did for me in a previous quarter, and they've given me permission to use it in my future classes. So obviously I'm not wanting my students to copy off of this, but I think it is a useful tool for students to use as they're working on an assignment to get a sense as to, like, okay, how has another student approached this in the past, and now how can I approach it in a maybe similar or divergent way, depending on what they think of the student example. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to hit on here. I keep the class pretty activity based. So there are a handful of reading assignments that students are doing, but all of those reading assignments are like serving in some ways discussion board assignments. So Um, so everything kind of revolves around the discussion board in that way. And yeah, Caleb, is there anything else you feel like I should hit on?
I think that's pretty good. Maybe just briefly talk about what a discussion board is like for in a class, because I bet we have some people watching that don't even really know what to expect for a discussion-based activity.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can look at the very first one that I do for my class. And okay, so for this discussion board assignment, I have students watch this brief YouTube video. It's this discussion board assignment is about visual literacy, and this is a YouTube video of George Lucas basically talking about what visual literacy is and why he thinks it's important. And then after students watch that video, they read this comic strip, and then they try to do a kind of quick visual analysis of the comic strip. And so all of my discussion board assignments, the directions are spelled out pretty clearly. I always describe them as tasks. So the task for this one says, read the comic strip below a few times, and then in your discussion board post, write one paragraph explaining what the comic means or what it seems to say about growing up or school or college or real life. And then in a separate paragraph, write about how the comic uses visual communication strategies to communicate that meaning. Focus on small details at play in the comic, such as the character's eyes, her changing hair, body language, the embodiment of reality, the font style, the plain white background, etc. And so, so there's the task for that assignment. And then all of my posts, all of my discussion board posts follow this format. They have to be at least 150 words long. And then students also need to respond to a classmate's post in at least 100 words. And so, so if I was a student taking the class, then I would click on this box that says reply, and this larger box would open up, and I'd start typing my response, and I'd say, okay, well, what does this comic strip seem to be saying about growing up? And I'd type out my response to that, and then I'd look at some of how the comic is kind of functioning visually, and talk a little bit about that in my discussion board post. And then I'd submit it. And the way that I have it set up with my discussion board assignments is that like a student can't see how other students have responded until they've responded themselves to a discussion board post. And so that's why it says down here, replies are only visible to those who have posted at least one reply. So if I were to type my response in here and click post reply, then it would fill up with all the other students in the class and what they said about it. And that's just a measure to make sure that, you know, people are trying to work through things on their own before they see how other people approached the assignment.
So the difference between instead of just writing a paper where the student is writing something and then sending it to the instructor for a grade, you're sharing it with the rest of the class. All of your peers are reading what you are posting, and then they're responding to your post in some way as well. So it's kind of trying to replicate or emulate a classroom discussion where you're kind of sitting around a circle talking about something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And some of these discussion board assignments that I do in here, like this one, when I teach on-ground classes, this is basically like an in-class activity that we do where I hand out photocopies of this comic, and then I have students like talk to each other in small groups about it, and then we talk about it as a full class. And yeah, so yeah, it is really trying to recreate those in-class discussions in the online environment. Yeah. And then the last thing that I'll say too is that like just so students don't feel like they're like on their own when they're taking an online class is like, for all of these assignments that students are doing, discussion board assignments and essay assignments, like I'm I spend a lot of time like writing feedback to students about like what they're doing in those assignments, um, and kind of trying to highlight things that they're doing effectively in the assignments, and then also like offer some suggestions, things to think about as they continue their work in the class. And I mentioned that just because, just so students know that like it's not like they just submit this and then it goes off into some void and they don't hear anything back about it. Is like, I don't know. I think across the college, but this is true, but I know it's true in the English department that like we work we work pretty tirelessly like responding to student work when we're teaching online classes. When I'm teaching online, I really miss that like the personal engagement that you get in the classroom. And so I try my best to like recreate that online by like, building rapport with my students through the feedback that I'm giving them on their work. So okay, I think
Great.
I'm gonna.
Yeah. No, that's perfect, Tim. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll pass it on to Craig. And just a reminder to anybody watching, if you click on that Q&A button along the bottom, if you have any questions about anything that Tim was showing you or anything that was not answered for you or anything you're wondering about how this works for a student, feel free to type in a question in the Q&A and we will do our best to answer that. So Professor Craig Rickett, you teach public speaking, right?
Public speaking and argumentation and debate.
Excellent.
Which is called argumentation and advocacy because it sounds fancier when you say it that way. Right. Are you going to give me screen share?
Yeah, are you able to, let me click it here. I think you should be able to share your screen. Is it not letting you?
Oh, let me go there.
There we go, perfect. All right, take it away.
All right, well, first of all, thank you, Caleb, for letting me share some insights into online education. My experience with online education is limited so far to teaching public speaking online, and that was really quite a challenge early on as my colleagues and I began designing what would be a part of this class and how we would work out the mechanics for doing that. But now that we've all been relegated to our basements and our garages and our bedrooms for educational purposes, this is, I think, for us, something that is working really well and giving students a good opportunity to develop their public speaking skills while at the same time having to practice this social distancing situation that we find ourselves in. So how are we doing that? Like Professor Greenup, my class is organized according to modules. I do have a homepage, which is a sort of the overview and the information that's important for students to understand. For this class, because there is so much that relies on the student's ability to both record themselves delivering a speech and then uploading that, there are certain technical technology requirements that probably go beyond just having a good, reliable internet. You would need a webcam that can make good recordings of yourself, a good microphone, those kinds of things. So I try to give that information early on. I also send a letter to students a couple of days before class begins that lets them know what some of those requirements are as well. My class uses, my public speaking class uses something called Open Educational Resources, and this is that is available to all students day one. They don't have to open an account. They don't have to do anything other than just to click on the link, and they will have access to a good textbook that is completely free of charge. More and more colleges and across the country, but certainly within the state of Washington, are actively adopting these open educational resources to try to keep the expense down for students as a barrier to their accessing information. What we found was that students were foregoing purchasing a textbook and trying to pass a class without a text because they simply couldn't afford it. And so in answer to that, we've developed the open educational resources. My classes, like Professor Greenup's, are organized according to modules, and the modules correspond with each of the weeks in a quarter, so it makes it fairly easy for students to work their way through the class material. And that is absolutely by design. So I try to give each of the modules, I try to give an overview of what we're going to be doing that week, so that students have sort of a kind of a sense coming into the week, what are we going to be studying? What are the subject matters that I'm going to be paying attention to, and how does that fit in with the rest of the class as far as the content is concerned? What you'll see I've added, and I'm hoping that the screen share is large enough for you to see. What I've also added to my modules is some sense of, and this is a rough estimate, but it's based on student input and student feedback. I've tried to, for each content page and for each major section of the module, I've tried to give the students some indication of about how much time it will take them to accomplish the tasks within that module. So in orienting ourselves to the class, which is one of the first things that we always do in class, in any class, I feel like, is to sort of get our bearings in the class itself, which means that we have to read the syllabus, which means that we have to sort of find our space in that class. And that's what this orienting ourselves to the class is really about. So I estimate that it would take probably 3.5 hours. The reason why I do that is I think it's helpful for students in their planning of their days, since online education relies so heavily on the student actually organizing their own time and their own activities themselves, rather than having, to actually go physically to a class. This allows a student an opportunity to plan their day, plan their time, plan their week in the midst of all of the other distractions that they'll be experiencing while they try to continue on with their education as well. So in the first module, of course, there's a lot of housekeeping activity, but then we also do get to some content in theory associated with communication and public speaking. Since I teach public speaking, I want to be able to demonstrate good public speaking behaviors as well. So I often record lectures and have those posted, and students can watch and actually have access to, for the entire class, the learning information. So this is where I feel like online learning actually increases the opportunity for the student to learn, in the sense that when I was a student, if I was having a hard time paying attention to a history lecture, and I missed and didn't take good notes during that history lecture, that was tough luck for me. I couldn't go back. There was no way for me to access that information after the fact. And one of the things that I really like about online education is that if we do it correctly, the student will have access to the learning materials for the entire quarter. So if some of my students forget some of my tips about dealing with public speaking anxiety or communication apprehension, they can always go back, revisit the lecture, and find that information again. So I really appreciate it for that. One of the things that I did want to just highlight here, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, but I'll still be explanatory, in my class, in the first module, because I'm wanting to promote good online learning behaviors with students, I set up prerequisites or requirements in the first module. So this module 1 says complete all items, which means that Canvas keeps track of when you have accessed a particular page. And when you've done it, you mark done, and Canvas then acknowledges that you have been to the page, that you've read the page, and that you've acknowledged that you've been there, and then you can move on to the next and the next. So I do this just in module 1 to help promote good attention to the content pages themselves. And then when module 1 is complete, then module 2, when all of the activities in module 1 are done, then module 2 through 10 become unlocked. And basically you have access then to the rest of the course and the rest of the learning materials there in the class itself. In the public speaking class, at least as the way that I've organized it, there's another instructor who teaches public speaking online as well. But the way I've organized it, we do a lot of learning, thinking, writing, and researching about speech and speech topics prior to actually delivering the speeches. Now, there is one exception to that when I ask students to introduce themselves in Module 2 with an assignment called the Turning Point Speech. And this is sort of a low stakes, pass, no pass assignment that allows students to both gain experience in recording themselves and posting their recordings either in YouTube, or we have in this class, we have Panopto recordings that's available if a student wants to post their recordings there. So it just gives them a good sort of low stakes entry into this process of recording speeches. And then of course, once we've recorded them, then we have the opportunity to watch and listen to ourselves, which is really, I think, one of the fundamental aspects of any public speaking class. You should have the ability as a speaker to see yourself and to hear yourself as meaning your audience see and hear you as well. So that's really the essentials of what class, the public speaking class is about, in terms of seeing the way that it is organized. I hope that some of you who are beginning your college experience in the fall will consider taking public speaking, or perhaps argumentation and advocacy, which is another form of public speaking. But think about that in terms of really moving your academic progress forward. Professor Greenup's class and my class both count as specific requirements for the AADTA, for the Associate of Arts and Science Direct Transfer Agreement degree. And so a lot of students seek them out for that reason. So unless there are any direct questions for me right now, I will be quiet and turn it back over to Caleb.
Excellent, thank you. I think that was great. I do want to emphasize something that you mentioned, and I think Professor Greenup did as well, this idea that there are some advantages to taking these classes online, especially if you feel like, if you're one of those students that kind of feels anxious about putting themselves out there in a class setting, especially when it comes to public speaking or classroom discussion. When I was a student, I had a ton of anxiety about those things, about especially public speaking was terrifying to me. And over time, because of some really helpful instructors, I've kind of learned to adjust to that and learn to overcome some of those anxieties. But especially in an online format, it really helps to give yourself time to collect your thoughts, to practice. When it's a written online discussion, you have that time to organize your thoughts in text in a way that is going to feel safer and more coherent than trying to just throw your thoughts out in the classroom. when it comes to public speaking, you have time to kind of set up your space and practice what you're going to say and do a couple of takes if you feel like the first one didn't go so well. So I think there's some real advantages to this format for those kinds of learning experiences.
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, when I was a college student, I totally biffed my second speech in my public speaking class, and there just was no going back, right? I was delivering it in front of a live audience, my classmates, and I totally biffed it. And you know, the online public speaking student now has the luxury of, well, if I make a terrible mistake, I'll just stop recording, start again, and get it done that way. So, but what's really interesting about the world that we're living in now is that nobody has a record of my biffing my second speech in public speaking class because they weren't being recorded. Now, everything lives seemingly forever in the online environment. So there's a lot of give and take, a lot of advantage, disadvantage to incorporating all of this technology. But it really is. I mean, for us in the educational setting, that we can carry on our tasks and our goals and our desires as educators in this environment, it's pretty amazing, I think. So I really invite students to sort of dive in. It can really further their sense of accomplishment after they've achieved you know, mastery in these particular communication skills, both the speaking and the writing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do you want your screen back?
I will remind people that they can click on the Q&A button if they have any questions. Go ahead and type those out. Those are sent to me anonymously. Nobody else sees those. And then we can do our best to answer any of those questions or concerns. At this point, I will turn things over to Tiana and Katie. They are a couple of our student success coaches, and they are incredibly helpful for students that are taking classes online. If you ever have any problems or concerns or feel like you're falling behind or feel like you need help, they are great resources to have on your side. So please take it away.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Caleb. So yeah, my name is Christiana Hennings, or also known as Tiana. And both my colleague and I, Katie, who's right over there, we are success coaches. And what that means is that we help students with online learning to maybe you might have a question about how to upload something onto Canvas, or maybe something might not be working quite right for you on Canvas. Maybe there's a small glitch where you're trying to upload a photo or a video, and we can get you connected to resources like IT department to help you, or we can also walk you through it. We also work with students to help them, to remind them about things that they need to do as a student, whether that be needing to remember when to submit financial aid, when tuition is due, how to request a transcript, how to communicate with your instructor, all of these things. And that's not only it, all of these things we can help coach you so that you can be a successful student with the Community Colleges of Spokane. And so for now, we're going to talk about some tips for online success. It can certainly be a journey to learn online and be independent and really do your schoolwork at home. And so a really important tip is to create a dedicated space in your home. I do this when I work from home. I have my own room, or I at least try to find my own table where I can focus and get work done. And sometimes this might mean taking your phone and putting it away somewhere. I know that sometimes seems easier said than done, but once you take away those distractions that are on the phone, or even blocking sometimes social media on your computer, or even on your phone can really help you to stay motivated and focused on your schoolwork, because your instructors will have a lot of, many different deadlines and assignments, discussion boards that you need to be doing. And you want to make sure you stay on track, right? But of course, make it a comfortable space, make the space clean, maybe put up photos of your family members. It's up to you, right? You are going to spend a good amount of time in that spot. So you want to make it your own. And sometimes, everyone's home is different, right? And you might be working in the kitchen and you might need to tell your family members, hey, between 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., I'm going to be doing a really important test or a really important essay. If you can minimize your distraction or not come into that room during that time, and talk to your family members about really helping you out to be a successful student to the best of your ability, right? And of course, you will be working a lot online, and you want to make sure that you can access Canvas. And so, we don't recommend that you use Internet Explorer or Edge. We recommend maybe Google Chrome, Firefox. And, if you do have any issues with Canvas, or even on your CTC Link student account, you can contact our IT department, and their phone number is right there. They have been very helpful in helping you maybe update your password if you forget your password, or if there's just something in the software that you need to work out. And what's great about Canvas is usually when you log in on your dashboard, there will be an online Canvas orientation, and you can click through that, go through the modules so that you can really be comfortable using Canvas, and really play around with it. Click on the messages, click on the calendar, really, get used to it even before classes begin, or shortly after. And you're going to be, you're going to set yourself up well early on. And of course, online learning, it takes a lot of independent learning, and so much is on the student to make sure that they stay on task and go through those modules by the deadlines that the instructors set for them, and do those assignments and submit them online. And I would recommend that you really stay consistent. If you work on your history class, and maybe you notice that you need maybe 5 to 6 hours per week, maybe more, maybe less, on that class, really, set a time where you say, okay, at Mondays from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then again from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., I'm going to work on my history assignment, or I'm going to do it for a few hours every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you get used to this depending on, when those assignments are due for each class. And don't wait till the last minute to do an assignment and submit it. It is really stressful to do a whole paper in one day and try to do it and try to submit it by 11:59 p.m. I really don't recommend that, and it's not always possible. And so even if, for example, a paper in your history class is not due until, the next week, really during those set times that you work on that class, work on it, do a little bit each day, set those times and be consistent. And so that you don't forget about it, so that you don't push one class to the wayside. And one way that you do that is by writing down or typing in what your deadlines are on a calendar, maybe Google Calendar, and even blocking off time on your Google Calendar for when you're working on certain subjects. And you'll kind of get used to this and figure out your own style on how to manage the deadlines and when you're going to work on what class. Some people will prefer to have their own paper planner where they write down their deadlines in it and kind of set time each week of what hours and what days they're going to be working on their schoolwork. And of course, like I was explaining earlier, both Katie and I, we help students be successful, and we have what's called Connect courses. And they aren't a real course, right? They don't have any assignments or requirements, and you don't get a grade. But it's similar to how a Canvas class is set up, where there are different modules and different resources in there that you can access. And when you're learning online, sometimes knowing what student services office to connect with for certain things might be hard to know right away. And so you can just go right into that Connect course and see information about the library, see information about how to connect with the registration office, see information about how to register for classes, see information about when to submit your financial aid application, and it just goes on, and information about how to order your books. All of these things are in a central location when you get added to that Connect course, and you can access it at any time, any day, and look through it and get information on what you need to know as a student. And so if you want to be a part of that Connect course, I highly recommend that you message Caleb your student ID number so that we can add you into some of these courses, or at least the Canvas shell, where you can access these resources. And you also get access to, of course, the Success Coach, right? If you have a specific question, you can message us on Canvas or email us. All of our contact information is very readily accessible. And we are quick responders to emails, questions, and phone calls about things that you might run into as a student. And you can use that, Canvas-based resource course as much or as little as you want. Sometimes we do send out announcements to remind students about what they need to do, and certain deadlines and scholarship opportunities. And you can, put in Canvas in your settings to have the announcements go to your email, or you don't need to do that. So it's really just a way for you to really get a head start and really feel better about balancing all the things that you might need to do as a student. So that is all that I had. Katie, did you have anything to add?
Well, yes, thanks, Tiana. I think you covered a lot of the important tips that students need to know to be successful in online learning. I would like to just put a quick plug out there that we have extended our application deadline. So if you're considering still on the fence about registering or maybe taking a class this fall, you still have time to submit an application. September 8th is our regular student application deadline. And if there's any international students in our audience today, the deadline for new international students is September 1st. I would just reiterate kind of the point that Tiana made, that do connect with us. The virtual campus provides opportunities, as Professor Greenup and Professor Rickett and Caleb all mentioned. I think one of those advantages is kind of developing your digital navigation skills too, because as we all know, the ability to do so is increasingly more important, both in our personal lives, but also in our professional lives. And I appreciate the opportunity in my educational experiences to develop some of those real world experiences. And I think the online learning experience can help you grow as individuals in that regard as well. But do reach out if you get stuck. Don't hesitate to ask questions. We're all here to help you. We're all here to guide you. We're all looking out for your success as a student, and with us and beyond. So with that, I'll give it back to Caleb, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you, you two. We still have a few minutes left in case anybody has any questions. Again, feel free to pop those in the Q&A tool. Or if you'd like to have somebody contact you later, probably via email, or we can even call or text you if you would prefer. Go ahead and send your contact info also through the Q&A. Again, no one else will see it but me, but I'll pass that on to people that will reach out to you if you'd like. One last thought from me, I guess, while we're waiting to see if any questions come in. Back in the day, there was something called a correspondence course. And in a correspondence course, Craig remembers, in a correspondence course, you must have taken some, yeah. In a correspondence course, you paid your money, and the college mailed you a package, and the package had a textbook and a workbook. And you sat down on your kitchen table and you read your textbook and you filled in your workbook and you mailed it back in and you got your grade. And that was the entire class. And you were completely on your own. If you had any questions, well, good luck. And I think sometimes people worry that that's what an online class is like, that it's like a correspondence course where you're just kind of on your own trying to figure it out. And that is not what a modern online class is like. You are constantly connected to your instructor, to student support resources like Katie and Tiana, and to your classmates. You're not just all alone by yourself. There are other human beings that are part of this class that are watching what you're doing and responding to what you're posting and sharing their experiences and their knowledge with you. And it's very much a back and forth communication. So if you are worried about that aspect of an online class, just understand that it's not a correspondence course.
If I can just sort of piggyback on that comment, Caleb, very quickly. I've built into the public speaking class the opportunity to meet live with students in a program called Adobe Connect, which is really similar to what we're doing here on Zoom and very similar to what we can do in Teams if that's the device we use. But I want to really sort of echo what you're saying, that even though we're in online learning right now and we're kind of forced to be in online learning right now, it doesn't mean that we're alone or disconnected from either our instructors or our classmates. There are so many tools that we have access to right now that makes online learning so much richer than the correspondence course that you were talking about. And yes, they were abysmal from my experience.
I might give a kind of going along with all this. I'll give a quick plug to the tutoring center on campus. The tutoring center has been really quick to adapt to the new online environment that we find ourselves in, and so there are peer tutors that students can meet with to get additional help in their classes. And like all the instructor has to do is like bring in a tutor into the class and add them on Canvas, and then students can set up appointments with the tutors. So and that's something I've been doing since the spring, is having a kind of a tutor on standby who is familiar with the class and has earned I think a 3.5 or higher in the class, and they're there too as a kind of an additional support that students can seek out should they want to do that.
Great. Yeah, that's a wonderful resource that a lot of classes have access to. We don't have any questions coming in, so we must have a pretty quiet audience this time around. That's okay. Again, if you have any questions later on, I put my email address in the chat. So feel free to copy that down, and you can contact me later on if you have a question or want some follow-up. And if I don't know the answer, I will get you in contact with somebody that does know the answer. So I think we're about out of time. So I really want to thank everybody that attended, either through Zoom or maybe just is watching this on one of our social media feeds. And thank you so much to Professor Greenup, Professor Ricketts, to Tiana, and to Katie for participating in this and sharing your experiences with online learning. And hopefully this was helpful to anybody watching to kind of give you a taste of what you could expect if you take some online classes through community colleges in Spokane. All right, so thank you everybody, and have a great day, and we will talk to you again in the future. Thanks all.